The Galactic Council station floated in space like a giant silver wheel. Inside, delegates from 47 different species walked through wide corridors filled with soft blue light. Ambassador Tejo stood near a large window, watching ships come and go from the station's docking bay. He was a tall man with kind eyes and a calm smile that never seemed to leave his face. Next to him stood Jiwoo, his aide. She was smaller than Tejo, with sharp eyes that noticed everything. She held a tablet close to her chest, reviewing notes from yesterday's meetings. Behind them both, Haesung leaned against the wall. She was introduced as a military advisor, though she rarely spoke about military matters. Her job seemed to be mostly standing quietly and watching. Today was important. The Chizari and the Lumens had been fighting over mining rights for nearly 100 years. The Chizari looked like giant insects with 6 legs and wings that buzzed when they were angry. The Lumens were made of living crystal that changed colors with their moods. Both species claimed the same asteroid field, and neither would give up their claim. Tejo had spent 3 months listening to both sides. He sat through endless meetings where the Chizari clicked and buzzed their arguments while the Lumens flashed angry red and orange. Other ambassadors had tried to solve this problem before. All of them failed, but Tejo just smiled and kept listening. The meeting room was round with seats arranged in a circle so everyone could see everyone else. Tejo sat between the Chizari representative and the Lumen speaker. The Chizari's wings buzzed loudly. The Lumen glowed deep red. They were both very angry. Tejo spoke in a soft voice. He suggested dividing the asteroid field into 3 parts. The Chizari could mine 1/3. The Lumens could mine another 1/3. The final 1/3 would remain untouched as a nature preserve. Both species would share the profits from a joint processing station. The room went quiet. The Chizari's wings stopped buzzing. The Lumen's color shifted from red to a thoughtful purple. Other delegates leaned forward in their seats. No one had thought of this solution before. It was so simple, so fair. After 2 hours of careful discussion, both sides agreed. They signed the treaty right there in the meeting room. The other delegates clapped and cheered. The Lumen speaker, whose name was Dalkaya, turned her crystalline body toward Tejo. Her colors shifted to warm gold, which meant deep respect. Dalkaya spoke in a voice like wind chimes. She said humans were natural peacemakers. She said the galaxy was lucky to have such patient, understanding beings. She said humans never seemed to get angry or frustrated, no matter how long the meetings lasted or how difficult the problems became. Tejo smiled and thanked her. He said humans simply believed in finding solutions that worked for everyone. Jiwoo stood behind him, smiling too. She made notes on her tablet about the successful treaty. That evening, there was a celebration in the station's main hall. Delegates from all species gathered to drink and eat and talk. Music played from speakers hidden in the walls. The lights were dimmed to a comfortable level that worked for all the different types of eyes in the room. Tejo moved through the crowd, shaking hands and accepting congratulations. His smile never changed. His voice stayed calm and friendly. He laughed at jokes and asked polite questions about families and home worlds. He was perfect at this. Jiwoo stood near the food tables watching the crowd. Her eyes kept moving to one group in particular. The Vrelox delegation stood in the corner, not mixing with the others. The Vrelox were massive creatures, nearly 8 feet tall, covered in thick scales. They had claws on their hands and sharp teeth in their wide mouths. They came from a warrior culture that valued strength above all else. The Vrelox commander was named Greythok. He had scars covering his face and arms. Each scar represented a battle he had won. He stood with his arms crossed, watching the celebration with obvious disgust. Next to him, other Vrelox warriors growled quietly to each other. Jiwoo noticed that Grathic's eyes kept following Tejo. There was something in that look she did not like. She walked over to where Haesung stood alone, holding a glass of water. Jiwoo spoke quietly. She said the Vrelox seemed aggressive. She said Greythok looked at Tejo like he was prey. Haesung took a slow sip of her water. Her eyes moved to the Vrelox group, then back to Jiwoo. She said she had noticed too. She said the Vrelox had been getting more hostile during trade negotiations all week. Haesung's voice was very quiet when she spoke next. She pointed out small details. The way Grathok shifted his weight onto the balls of his feet, the way his claws flexed and relaxed, the way his warriors kept checking the exits. These were the movements of predators preparing to hunt. Jiwoo felt a small chill run down her back. She asked if they should tell Taiho. Haesung shook her head. She said there was no proof of anything wrong. The Vrlocs were always aggressive. It was their nature. Besides, this was a neutral station. There were rules against violence here. Ancient treaties protected this place. But Jiwoo noticed that Haesung's hand stayed close to her side, where a small pistol was hidden under her jacket. Humans were not supposed to carry weapons to diplomatic functions, but Haesung always did, just in case. The celebration continued for another 3 hours. Delegates drank and laughed and made plans for future cooperation. Taeho gave a short speech about the importance of patience and understanding. Everyone clapped. Dalkaya's crystals glowed warm gold again. Finally, the crowd began to thin. Delegates returned to their quarters. Taeho, Jiwoo, and Haesung walked back to the human section of the station. The corridors were quieter now. Their footsteps echoed off the metal walls. In his quarters, Taeho removed his formal jacket and sat down at his desk. Jiwoo brought him a cup of tea. He thanked her with that same calm smile. He said tomorrow would be busy. There were more treaties to sign, more disputes to settle. The work of peace never ended. Jiwoo nodded and wished him good night. She walked to her own quarters next door. Haesung's room was across the hall. As Jiwoo prepared for sleep, she could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. She kept thinking about Grathok's eyes, about the way the Vrlocs warriors had watched the crowd. She told herself she was being paranoid. The station was safe. It had been safe for 300 years. No one had ever broken the peace treaties. No one would dare. But as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Jiwoo could not sleep. Somewhere in the station, she knew the Vrlocs were not sleeping either, and Haesung, in her room across the hall, sat fully dressed on her bed with her pistol in her lap, waiting for something she hoped would not come. The explosion came at 3 a.m, station time. Jiwoo was thrown from her bed as the wall shook. Emergency lights flashed red. A loud alarm screamed through the speakers. She grabbed her clothes and dressed quickly, her hands moving on their own while her mind tried to understand what was happening. Another explosion rocked the station. This one was closer. Jiwoo could hear screaming from the corridors. She opened her door and saw smoke filling the hallway. Other delegates ran past, confused and terrified. A Chisari stumbled by, one of its wings torn and bleeding. Taeho appeared from his quarters. He was already dressed, already calm. His eyes met Jiwoo's and he nodded once. No words were needed. They moved together toward the diplomatic wing where most of the other delegates would be. Haesung joined them at the intersection. She had her pistol in her hand now, held low and ready. She spoke quickly, her voice sharp and clear. Vrlocs warships had breached the neutral zone. Boarding parties were cutting through the station's outer hull. The Council's security forces were overwhelmed. They reached the main conference hall. Inside, dozens of delegates huddled together. Dalkaya stood near the center, her crystalline body flashing between red and white with fear. Other species crowded around her. The Chisari buzzed in panic. Small, furry creatures from the outer rim whimpered and clung to each other. Taeho walked to the center of the room. His voice cut through the panic. He told everyone to stay calm. He told them to move away from the doors. He asked if anyone was injured. Several delegates raised their hands or tentacles or wings. Taeho organized the healthy ones to help the injured to the back of the room. The main doors exploded inward. Metal bent and tore. 3 Vrlocs warriors pushed through the smoke. They were even bigger than Grathok, covered in battle armor, carrying weapons that crackled with energy. Their eyes scanned the room like hunters spotting prey. The lead warrior spoke in a deep, rumbling voice. He said the council was finished. He said the age of peaceful talk was over. The Vrlocs Empire would take what it wanted. Weak species would serve or die. He raised his weapon toward the cowering delegates. Haesung moved first. Her pistol came up smooth and fast. 3 shots rang out before anyone else could react. The lead warrior's weapon sparked and died. He looked down at it in confusion, then at the human woman who had somehow shot the power cell from 30 feet away. The warrior roared and charged. Haesung did not run. She sidestepped at the last moment, her movements fluid like water. As the warrior passed, she struck him behind the knee with the butt of her pistol. He crashed to the floor. Before he could rise, she had kicked his helmet hard enough to dent the metal. He stopped moving. The other 2 warriors stared. They had never seen anything move that fast. Humans were supposed to be slow. weak, peaceful. But this human woman had dropped their squad leader in 3 seconds. They raised their weapons. Taeho was already moving. He grabbed a ceremonial staff from the wall, a decoration that was supposed to represent peace between species. In his hands, it became something else. He swung it hard into the second warrior's arm. Bones cracked. The weapon fell. Taeho spun the staff and brought it down on the warrior's head. The third warrior turned to face this new threat. Jiwoo was there instead. She had picked up a heavy ornamental vase. She threw it with perfect aim. It struck the warrior's helmet, cracking the visor. While he was stunned, she grabbed his arm and twisted. The warrior was twice her size, but somehow she had the leverage. His own momentum sent him crashing into the wall. The room was silent except for the alarm. The 3 Verlox warriors lay unconscious on the floor. The delegates stared at the 3 humans. Taeho still held the staff. His diplomatic smile was completely gone. His face was blank, his eyes cold and calculating. This was not the patient ambassador they knew. Dalkaya's voice was barely a whisper. She asked what was happening. She asked where the peaceful humans had gone. She asked if this was some kind of trick or illusion. Taeho looked at her. When he spoke, his voice was still calm, but different somehow. Colder. He said there was no trick. He said humans were exactly what they had always been. Then he turned to Haesung and Jiwoo and started giving orders in a quiet, clipped tone that sounded nothing like a diplomat. Haesung checked the corridor outside. She reported 6 more warriors heading their way. She asked for instructions. Taeho thought for 3 seconds, then rattled off a plan. He told Haesung to take position behind the left doorway. He told Jiwoo to get the delegates into the side rooms and lock the doors. He told a Chisari engineer to find a way to seal this section of the station. Everyone moved. The delegates who could walk helped those who could not. Jiwoo guided them quickly and quietly into the smaller rooms. Taeho grabbed 2 more ceremonial staffs from the walls. He handed one to a large delegate from a heavy-gravity world. He kept the other for himself. The Verlox warriors came through the door in a rush. Haesung dropped 2 before they made it 5 steps. Her shots were impossibly precise. Each bullet found a gap in their armor, hitting joints and power cells. The warriors fell like puppets with cut strings. The remaining 4 spread out. They had learned. They kept their weapons up and their armor toward the human woman with the pistol. But they had forgotten about Taeho. He came from the side, moving fast and low. His staff caught one warrior in the knee. As that one fell, Taeho grabbed a dropped energy weapon and fired it point blank into another warrior's chest plate. The heavy-gravity delegate swung his staff like a club. He was strong but clumsy. A Verlox warrior dodged easily and raised his weapon. Jiwoo appeared behind him, having left the delegate secured. She had found a piece of broken pipe. She swung it hard into the back of the warrior's helmet. He staggered forward into the heavy-gravity delegate's next swing. The last warrior saw his squad falling. He turned to run. Haesung's bullet caught him in the leg. He crashed to the floor, howling. Taeho was there in an instant, kicking the weapon away, pressing the staff against the warrior's throat. Taeho's voice was very quiet. He asked how many more warriors were on the station. He asked where Grathok was. He asked about the Verlox battle plan. The warrior snarled and spit. Taeho pressed harder with the staff. He asked again. The warrior's eyes went wide. He had never seen a human angry before. He did not know they could get angry. But this was not anger. This was something worse. This was cold calculation. This was a predator deciding whether prey was worth keeping alive. The warrior talked. He said there were 30 more warriors on the station. He said Grathok was on the command deck, taking control of the station systems. He said the Verlox fleet was waiting outside to finish off any survivors. Taeho nodded. He looked at Haesung and Jiwoo. He did not need to say anything. They understood. They had trained for this. All humans trained for this, even the diplomats. Especially the diplomats. Dalkaya watched from the doorway of the side room. Her crystalline body had gone completely white with shock. She watched Taeho stand up, watched him check the energy weapon he had taken, watched him motion for Haesung and Jiwoo to follow. She watched 3 diplomats transform into something the galaxy had never seen before. She watched them become hunters. Taeho moved through the station's corridors like he had built them himself. He knew every turn, every maintenance shaft, every shortcut. Jiwoo realized he must have memorized the entire layout during those long, boring diplomatic meetings. While everyone else talked, he had been planning. Always planning. They found 4 more Vralox warriors in the next section. These ones were smarter. They had taken positions behind cover, their weapons aimed at the main corridor. It was a good ambush. It would have worked on anyone else. But Taeho did not use the main corridor. He led them through a maintenance tunnel that opened behind the warriors. Haesung went first, moving silent as smoke. She took down 2 warriors before they knew she was there. The other 2 turned, and Jiwoo was waiting with a captured energy weapon. She fired once, twice. Clean shots, professional. They kept moving. More Vralox appeared. Each time the humans were ready. They used the station itself as a weapon. Taeho sealed doors behind the warriors, trapping them. He vented atmosphere in empty sections, forcing the enemy to retreat. He redirected the station's artificial gravity, making whole corridors impossible to walk through. Other species started to notice. A group of Chizari engineers watched from a sealed room as Taeho rewired a power junction. He worked fast, his hands steady. When he was done, the lights in 3 sections went dark. The Vralox warriors there were blind. Haesung and Jiwoo moved through the darkness like they could see perfectly. The Vralox never knew what hit them. Word spread through the surviving delegates. The humans were fighting back. Not just fighting, winning. Species that had never seen combat before gathered in safe rooms watching security feeds in disbelief. The patient smiling ambassador was systematically destroying an elite warrior force. Dalkaya watched from the conference hall. She had access to the security system. She watched Taeho corner 3 warriors in the dining hall. He threw a chair, not at them but at a gas line he had deliberately cracked open. The chair sparked against metal. The gas ignited. The explosion was small, controlled. It knocked the warriors down without killing them. Taeho walked through the smoke and disabled them one by one. She watched Jiwoo fight a warrior twice her size in hand-to-hand combat. The warrior had claws and teeth and 100 pounds of muscle on her. But Jiwoo moved like water, turning his strength against him. Every time he swung, she was not there. Every time she struck, it was at a weak point. Joints, nerves, pressure points. In 30 seconds, the warrior was on the ground unconscious. She watched Haesung clear an entire deck. 9 warriors, heavily armed, positioned in a defensive formation. Haesung used mirrors to check corners. She used sounds to make them look the wrong way. She used their own aggression against them, making them charge into traps. When it was over, all 9 were down, and Haesung had not taken a single hit. But what scared Dalkaya most was not the fighting. It was the way they fought. The humans did not get angry. They did not roar or beat their chest or make threats. They just moved with cold mechanical precision, like machines, like programs running exactly as designed. Taeho's face never changed. The diplomatic smile was gone, but there was no rage beneath it. Just focus, just calculation. He treated the combat like another negotiation, finding the most efficient solution to each problem. They reached the command deck after 2 hours of fighting. The door was sealed and reinforced. Greythok was inside with his personal guard, 10 of the biggest, strongest Vralox warriors. They had control of the station's weapons and life support. Taeho studied the door for 30 seconds. Then he turned to a nearby wall panel and opened it. Inside were power cables as thick as his arm. He pulled out a small device from his pocket. Jiwoo stared. That device was not standard diplomatic equipment. Taeho attached the device to the cables. He set a timer. 5 minutes. He motioned for them to move back to the previous corridor. They took positions behind cover and waited. The explosion was not loud. Just a soft thump, but all the lights on the command deck went dark. The reinforced door, controlled by electronics, slid open on emergency backup power. Greythok's guards rushed out trying to see what happened. They ran straight into the ambush. Haesung and Jiwoo fired from 2 directions. The guards had night vision in their helmets, but the humans had shot out those systems first. Blind and confused, the guards went down fast. Greythok stood in the command center alone now. Emergency lighting cast red shadows across his scarred face. He held a massive energy rifle, the kind that could punch through battle armor. He aimed it at the doorway, waiting. Taeho walked through the door. He did not run or hide. He just walked, steady and calm. Greythok pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. The weapon was dead. Its power cell drained when Taeho cut the power to the entire deck. Greythok threw the weapon aside and roared. He charged, claws extended. Teho sidestepped just enough. As Greythok passed, Teho struck him in the spine with the captured staff. Not hard enough to break anything. Just hard enough to send the right message. Greythok spun around. He was fast for his size, but Teho was already moving. The staff cracked against Greythok's knee, then his elbow, then his shoulder. Each strike was precise. Each one targeted a nerve cluster. Greythok's limbs started going numb. The Vraylock's commander fell to one knee. He looked up at the human diplomat. For the first time in his life, Greythok felt something he had never felt in battle. Fear. Teho stood over him. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, almost gentle. He said he had been watching Greythok for days. He said he had noticed the slight limp in Greythok's left leg from an old injury. He said he had seen how Greythok favored his right side in combat. He said he had counted every scar and calculated what each one meant about fighting style and technique. Teho said he had smiled and shaken Greythok's hand and made small talk at the reception. All while studying him, learning him, planning how to take him apart if necessary. Greythok's eyes went wide. He understood now. Every diplomatic meeting, every friendly conversation, every patient smile. The humans had been hunting the entire time. They just did it so slowly, so carefully that no one noticed. Haesung and Jiwoo entered the command center. Jiwoo moved to the control panels and started working. She restored power to critical systems. She sent a message to the Vraylock's fleet using Greythok's command codes. The message was simple: retreat immediately, or the humans would show them why Earth had no natural predators left. The Vraylock's fleet hesitated. Then slowly they began backing away from the station. They had seen the security feeds. They had watched 3 humans take apart 30 elite warriors. They had watched their greatest commander fall to a diplomat armed with a decorative stick. They retreated. Throughout the station, delegates emerged from their hiding places. They stared at the unconscious Vraylock's warriors scattered through the corridors. They stared at the 3 humans standing in the command center. They stared and tried to understand what they had just witnessed. Dalkaya's voice came over the communication system. She spoke slowly, her wind chime voice shaking. She asked the question everyone was thinking. She asked what the humans really were. She asked if everything they knew about humanity was a lie. Teho looked up at the camera. His face was still blank, still cold. Then slowly his diplomatic smile returned. But now everyone could see what was behind it. Now everyone understood what that smile really meant. He said they would talk about it tomorrow, after everyone had rested, after the wounded were treated, after things were calm again. He said it in that same patient, reasonable tone he always used. But now that tone sounded different. Now it sounded like a predator deciding to let its prey live another day. The next morning came slowly. Medical teams moved through the station, treating the injured. Engineers worked to repair the damaged sections. Security forces rounded up the unconscious Vraylock's warriors and locked them in secure holding cells. Everything was clean and orderly. Professional Teho called a meeting in the main conference hall. Every species that could walk sent representatives. They came slowly, nervously. They looked at Teho differently now. They kept their distance. Dalkaya entered last. Her crystalline body was pale gray, the color of uncertainty. She took her seat across from Teho. Around the circular table, 43 other species watched and waited. Teho stood. His diplomatic smile was back in place. His voice was calm and friendly. He thanked everyone for coming. He said he understood they had questions. He said he would try to answer them as honestly as possible. A Chizari representative spoke first. Its wings buzzed with confusion. It asked if humans had been hiding their true nature all along. It asked if the peaceful diplomats were just an act. Teho was quiet for a moment. Then he began to speak. He told them about Earth. He told them about a world where humans were not the biggest or strongest or fastest creatures. He told them about predators with claws and teeth and venom. He told them about a species that survived by being smarter than everything else. He explained persistence hunting. He said human ancestors would chase prey for days. Not fast but steady, never stopping. The prey would run until its heart burst. The humans would just keep walking, following the tracks, wearing it down. He said humans did not need to be fast. They just needed to never give up. Jiwoo stood next. She spoke about pattern recognition. She said humans evolved to see patterns in everything. Weather patterns, animal behavior, social dynamics. She said this was why humans were good diplomats. They could read body language and predict actions. She said it was also why they were dangerous. They could spot weaknesses and plan attacks. She said every conversation was data collection. Every meeting was threat assessment. Every friendly smile was a predator studying its environment. She said humans could not turn this off. It was built into their brains. They analyzed everything all the time, whether they wanted to or not. Hae-sung spoke last. She talked about tools. She said humans had no claws, so they made knives. No thick hide, so they made armor. No venom, so they made poisons. She said every object was a potential weapon in human hands. A chair could break bones. A pen could pierce an eye. A drinking glass could cut a throat. She said this was why humans seemed peaceful. They did not need to look dangerous. They could make anything dangerous. A human in an empty room was still armed. A human with no weapons was still a threat, because the human brain was the weapon. Everything else was just tools. The conference hall was completely silent. Delegates stared at the three humans, some with fear, some with awe, some with a sick kind of understanding. Dalkaya's voice was barely audible. She asked why humans chose to be diplomats if they were such effective killers. She asked why they did not just take what they wanted like the Verlocs tried to do. Taeho sat down slowly. He looked tired now, older. He said that was exactly the point. He said humans knew what they were. They knew what they could do, and they chose not to do it. He said human history was full of violence, wars that killed millions, weapons that could destroy entire cities. Humans had fought each other for thousands of years, perfecting the art of killing. They got very, very good at it. But then, he said, humans made a choice. They decided that being good at killing did not mean they should kill. They decided that being apex predators did not mean they should hunt. They decided to use their predatory instincts for something else. For understanding, for negotiation, for peace. He said it was hard. Every day, humans fought against millions of years of evolution. Every time someone was rude or aggressive or threatening, human instincts screamed to fight back, to dominate, to destroy. But humans had learned to suppress those instincts, to smile instead of snarl, to talk instead of attack, to find solutions instead of weaknesses. Taeho's voice was very quiet now. He said this made diplomacy harder for humans than for any other species, because other species were naturally peaceful. They did not understand violence in their bones. But humans did. Humans had to choose peace every single moment of every single day, and most of the time they chose it. A small delegate from the Outer Rim asked what happened when humans did not choose peace. Its voice trembled. Taeho looked at it. His expression was sad. He said what happened to the Verlocs. He said when humans stopped choosing peace, when they let their true nature surface, they became the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. Because they combined millions of years of predatory evolution with advanced technology and tactical thinking. He said the Verlocs were warriors. They trained for combat their whole lives, but humans were hunters. They were born for it. Every human child played hunting games. Every human brain automatically calculated trajectories and weak points and escape routes. It was not training. It was instinct. Jiwoo added something that made everyone's blood run cold. She said humans were also pack hunters. They coordinated naturally. She, Taeho, and Hae-sung had never trained together. They had never practiced that fight. But they moved like a single unit because millions of years of evolution had programmed them to work together when hunting prey. She said this was why human diplomats always traveled in groups, not for safety, for effectiveness. Multiple humans meant multiple perspectives, multiple assessments, multiple strategies. She said the galaxy should be grateful humans chose to use this coordination for negotiation instead of war. Dalkaya's color shifted to dark blue. Deep thought mixed with fear. She asked if other humans were like this. She asked if every human on every world had these instincts. Taeho nodded. He said every human, scientists, artists, teachers, parents, children, all of them had the same predatory instincts. All of them could become dangerous if necessary. He said this was why humans were careful about who they sent as diplomats. Not because diplomats were special. Because diplomats were trusted to keep choosing peace even when it was hard. He stood up again. He walked to the window that showed the stars beyond. He said humans wanted peace. They truly did. But they wanted everyone to understand the choice they were making. Peace was not humans being weak. Peace was humans being strong enough to control themselves. He turned back to the delegates. His smile was gone again. His eyes were serious. He said the galaxy could continue as it was. Humans would continue being diplomats. They would continue finding compromises and building alliances and solving disputes. But everyone needed to understand what humans were choosing not to be. He said the Verlocs had made the mistake of thinking patience meant weakness. They thought humans who talked were humans who could not fight. They were wrong. Humans talked because it was harder than fighting. Because it required more control, more discipline, more strength. Tejo's voice was ice cold when he spoke his final words. He said any species that attacked a peaceful species, that broke treaties, that tried to enslave others, would learn what humans chose to suppress every day. They would learn why Earth's apex predators did not need claws or fangs or armor. They would learn that the scariest predator was the one that learned to think before it killed. 3 days after the attack, the Galactic Council station looked almost normal. The damaged sections were repaired. The wounded were healing. The Verlocs prisoners sat in their cells, quietly waiting for transport back to their empire. Everything was clean and orderly, but nothing was the same. Tejo walked into a negotiation meeting between the Chisari and another species arguing about water rights. He smiled and sat down in his usual seat. He asked polite questions. He listened patiently. He suggested compromises. He was the perfect diplomat again, but the other delegates flinched when he moved too quickly. They watched his hands when he reached for his water glass. They measured the distance between themselves and him. They could not forget what those hands had done 3 days ago. They could not forget how fast he had moved, how cold his eyes had been. Tejo noticed. Of course he noticed. He noticed everything, but he said nothing. He just kept smiling and kept talking and kept finding solutions. After 6 hours of negotiation, the water rights dispute was solved. Both sides signed the agreement. Everyone clapped politely. No one wanted to make him angry. Jiwoo worked in the archives researching trade patterns for an upcoming meeting. A Lumen clerk approached her desk nervously. The clerk needed help finding a document. Jiwoo smiled and helped, pulling up the file in seconds. The clerk thanked her and backed away quickly, keeping Jiwoo in sight until safely around the corner. Jiwoo sighed. She missed the old days when people were comfortable around her, when they saw her as a helpful aide, not a dangerous predator. But she understood. She had seen the security footage. She had watched herself take down that Verlocs warrior. She looked scary. She was scary. She always had been. Everyone just knew it now. Haesung gave a presentation to the Council's security forces. She showed them footage from the attack. She explained what the humans had done and why it worked. She pointed out mistakes the Verlocs had made. She suggested better defensive positions and response protocols. The security officers listened carefully. They took notes. They asked questions. But their hands shook slightly when Haesung demonstrated a disarming technique on a volunteer. The volunteer was a large, strong officer from a heavy-gravity world. Haesung put him on the ground in 3 seconds without hurting him, just to show the principle. He got up slowly and returned to his seat. No one else volunteered. In the evening, Dalkaya requested a private meeting with Tejo. They met in a small garden room, surrounded by plants from different worlds. The air smelled like flowers and earth. It was supposed to be peaceful, relaxing. Dalkaya's crystalline body was soft yellow, the color of cautious hope. She asked Tejo if humans would always choose peace. She asked if the galaxy could trust them. Tejo was quiet for a long time. He looked at the plants around them. He said trust was earned, not given. He said humans would have to prove themselves every day, every meeting, every negotiation, every moment they chose to talk instead of fight. He said humans could not promise to never use violence again. That would be a lie. There would be other Verlocs, other species that thought peaceful meant weak, and humans would defend themselves and others. But they would always try peace first, always. Dalkaya asked why. If humans were such effective predators, why not just take control of the galaxy? Why pretend to be equals with species that could not fight back? Tejo smiled. A real smile this time, not the diplomatic one. He said because being able to do something did not mean they should do it. He said humans had learned that lesson the hard way on their own world. They had almost destroyed themselves with wars and weapons and the belief that might made right. He said humans chose peace because war was too easy. Any fool could fight, any idiot could kill. But building something, creating something, working together across different species and cultures and worldviews, that was hard. That required real strength. That required controlling the predator and using the brain for something better. Dalkaya's color shifted to thoughtful purple. She said she was starting to understand. She said humans were not pretending to be diplomats. They were choosing to be diplomats. Every day, every moment, against every instinct. Tejo nodded. He said that was exactly right. He said it was harder than anyone knew, sitting through 18-hour meetings without showing frustration, smiling at insults, finding compromise when every instinct screamed to dominate, but humans did it because it was the right thing to do. He said the galaxy did not need more warriors. It had plenty of those. It needed builders, thinkers, people willing to do the hard work of peace. And humans, despite their nature, despite their instincts, had decided to be those people. Dalkaya was quiet. Then she asked one more question. She asked what humans wanted in return. What was their price for choosing peace? Tejo's expression turned serious. He said respect. Not fear. Respect. He said the galaxy needed to understand that human patience was a gift, not a weakness. That human diplomacy was a choice, not a necessity. That when humans smiled and compromised and found middle ground, they were choosing to do that. They did not have to. He said species that understood this would find humans to be the best allies in the galaxy. Patient, loyal, creative, problem solvers. But species that mistook kindness for weakness, that thought peaceful meant harmless, would learn a very different lesson. Dalkaya understood. She thanked Tejo and left the garden room. Her color was bright white now. The color of truth. Understood. She would share this conversation with the council. She would help them understand what humans really were. News of the attack spread through the galaxy. The Verlox Empire sent formal apologies and reparations. Their survivors had told stories about the humans. About the diplomat who fought like a general. About the aide who moved like smoke. About the advisor who never missed. The stories grew with each telling, becoming legends. Other aggressive species reconsidered their plans. Expansion through conquest suddenly seemed more dangerous. If peaceful humans could do that, what could military humans do? No one wanted to find out. Trade agreements with human worlds became more popular. Protection treaties were signed. Research partnerships were formed. Not because species feared humans, but because they respected what humans chose not to be. A month after the attack, Tejo stood at the same window where he had stood before everything changed. Jiwoo and Haesung joined him. They watched ships come and go from the station. Everything looked normal. Everything looked peaceful. Jiwoo asked if things would ever go back to how they were. Tejo shook his head. He said no. The galaxy knew the truth now. But that was not a bad thing. Fear kept people careful. Respect kept them honest. Haesung said other species were starting to understand. They watched humans more carefully now. They noticed the patterns. They saw how humans analyzed everything. How they never stopped learning. How they turned every experience into data for future reference. She said it was like watching prey realize they were in a cage with a sleeping tiger. The tiger was friendly. The tiger chose to sleep. But they all knew what would happen if someone poked it too hard. Tejo smiled. His diplomatic smile. But now it meant something different. Now when he smiled, species saw two things at once. They saw the patient diplomat who would work tirelessly for peace. And they saw the apex predator who had taken down an empire's warriors in a single night. Both were true. Both were always true. The galaxy just understood it now. A new delegation arrived at the station. They were aggressive traders who usually bullied smaller species into bad deals. They swaggered through the corridors, loud and demanding. They requested a meeting with human representatives to discuss trade routes. Tejo, Jiwoo, and Haesung met them in a conference room. The traders started with threats and ultimatums. They had used these tactics successfully for years. They expected the humans to fold immediately. Tejo just smiled. That diplomatic smile, that patient smile, that smile that now meant something very different than it used to mean. He said they should discuss this calmly. He said threats were unnecessary. He said humans preferred to find solutions that worked for everyone. His voice was soft and friendly and absolutely terrifying. The traders went quiet. They had heard the stories. They looked at the three humans sitting across from them. The diplomat, the aide, the advisor. 3 ordinary-looking beings who had destroyed an elite military force without breaking a sweat. The lead trader cleared his throat. He said perhaps they had started off on the wrong foot. He said they would be happy to negotiate fairly. He said they respected human customs and hoped for a mutually beneficial arrangement. Tejo's smile widened slightly. He said he was glad they could be reasonable. He said he looked forward to a productive discussion. He gestured for them to sit. They sat quickly. 8 hours later, they signed a fair trade agreement. Both sides got what they needed. No threats, no ultimatums, just calm, patient negotiation with 3 humans who never stopped smiling. After the traders left, Haesung laughed quietly. She said that was easier than the Veralox. Tejo agreed. He said it was amazing what clear communication could accomplish. Jiwoo added that respect made everything simpler. They returned to their quarters. Tomorrow would bring new meetings, new disputes, new species to work with. The work of peace never ended. But now it was easier.